Right, perfect. I think we're good to go. So hello, thank you everyone for your time this evening. Hopefully today you would have received an email from us which gives you a little bit more information about the NPQs that we will talk about a bit later on relating to funding. So for those of you that I haven't met, I am Faye McGill and I am Deputy Director of the Thames Gateway Teaching School Hub, and we are joined by Nicola Taylor, who works for Elsie and is going to talk us through specifically the different issues and different things that the courses cover, so that you've got a real basis of information to make your choices when you're looking at staff that potentially want to do the NPQs starting either in November or February. So just a really quick one from me in terms of the Teaching School Hub before I hand over. So hopefully you will be aware that we have been designated as a teaching school hub, and we cover the Thames Gateway, covers Medway, Gravesham and Dartford and beyond. And our 5 key areas that we focus on are initial teacher training, primarily through KMT, appropriate body work. We cover the early careers framework, working with EDT, obviously in national professional qualifications, working with our partners at Elsie, and then wider professional development. So you will have, I'm sure, received a number of emails from us with regards to those areas, and you will have our contact details if there's anything other than the national qualifications that you'd like to talk to us about. It's nice to meet you all today. So today we are here to talk about the NPQs, and in particular the changes and the reform. So I am sure that you will be aware that the middle leaders course no longer exists. And in its place, although not strictly speaking a swap, we now have 3 specialist NPQs, so leading teacher development, leading teaching and leading behaviour and culture. The senior leadership, headship and executive leadership still exist. They have been changed slightly, and Nicola will give us a little bit more information on those as we go through. So without further ado, I will hand over to Nicola, who is going to give us much more detail in terms of what you can expect and what your staff can expect if they sign up to study any of those courses. Nicola.
Thank you, Faye. So actually, if we just stick on that one slide for a moment, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So as Faye said, there is a change away from the NPQ ML as it previously stood, and it's been replaced by those 3 specialist qualifications instead. The main difference here that I think we need to communicate to those who would potentially be looking for a middle leadership development course is that the specialist NPQs are just that. They really focus in on those specialist areas and make sure that you've got a range of expertise to cover the different elements of the courses, which I'll talk to you about in a moment. What it means, however, is that traditional suite of experiences that you might have had on a middle leader course, like how to have a difficult conversation or how to set up and hold a department meeting, those sorts of things are no longer covered at that level by the NPQs. So it's not a case now that there would be a progression from the ML to the SL to the H to the EL. It may well be that actually at a given moment in time, your leadership portfolio means that you might be best placed to be studying the leading teaching qualification. However, if your leadership portfolio changed and you suddenly had more interest in pastoral elements of running a school, then it could be seen that you then went on to do the leading behaviour and culture qualification, because although there might be some overlap in those in terms of high expectations, the content of the courses is quite significantly different. The SL, the H and the EL, as Faye said, are still very similar to the way in which they have been run in the past. And if you look at the frameworks, you'll see that actually the content is quite similar, but it plays itself out in the level of leadership accountability that you have as to how the course differs. But I just want to be clear from the start that traditional middle leadership course content is no longer sitting within the NPQs at that specialist level. So why should we be talking about the NPQs at all, and why might you want to be doing your NPQs with Elsie? If we move on one slide, please, Faye, I will explain that. So Elsie is a national provider. There are 9 national providers, and we work with a range of delivery partners across the country and internationally to roll out this suite of NPQ qualifications. What we're interested in, however, is not just people who sign up to do a course and then complete that course over a given period of time and move on, but what we want to do is build lasting relationships between the participants on those courses, both in their local context, but also giving people the opportunity to connect with leaders and teachers in schools that are outside of your own context or even outside of your own country. We will be engaging with providers in terms of our curriculum content and our curriculum review and feedback. And that's something that I think Faye has already communicated with people. If you want to have an opportunity to help write some of the materials sitting within the NPQs, or you'd be interested in providing us with feedback on the NPQ qualifications, then Faye's got a mechanism for you to be able to get in touch with us to be able to do that. As an organisation, we look at a bottom-up approach to continuous improvement. So what we are looking for is those people that enter into a partnership with us to really feed into the experience that the participants have, but also the mechanisms for improving the quality of the course over time. So at regular points, we'll be asking you for your feedback. We'll be asking you to tell us what you think about the participant experience. We'll be asking you to tell us what you think about the range of qualifications and how they're leading to improvement within your own schools. We'll also be asking for your involvement in terms of becoming a facilitator or working with us as a coach. And again, that's something that Faye will coordinate for those schools that are working with the Thames Gateway Teaching School Hub. And I'm sure she's already been in touch with you. And if not, we'll be in touch with you shortly to look at those people who would be interested in becoming facilitators for the courses or acting as coaches for those who are beyond their own school setting. Whilst there is no longer a requirement in these NPQs for people to undertake a change management project, so those of you that are familiar with the old style NPQs, you'll know that you had to do a project in your own school, and if you were doing the H or the EL, you had to do a project in other people's schools as well. That's no longer a requirement of the NPQs. However, the approach that we're taking at LC to the course means that as you progress through each one of those courses, if you did have an area of your school improvement plan you were responsible for, or you had an element of change that you wanted to implement in your school, you'll be offered the opportunity to use that as your live case study, if you like, as you move through the qualification. But I'll come on to talk to you about the assessment route in a little while. So, on the screen at the moment are the curriculum design principles. So these are the things that each of those NPQ qualifications studied with LC is designed to implement and designed to offer the participants as well. So Faye, if we could move on one slide, please. Thank you very much. So the way in which the courses are structured, as Faye said, there are 2 cohort start dates. This year, the first cohort will start in November and the second cohort will start in February. However, in subsequent years, it will be a September and a February start. There's just a slight delay to the start times for the DFE this year. The specialist NPQs will last 12 months. And they will be split into 3 learning blocks or 3 modules, each one of those modules taking place over the course of a seasonal term. So September to December, and then December through to Easter, and Easter through to the end of the year. The assessment that the NPQ specialist course participants would then undertake takes place after that. So there's a 3-month assessment window, or a 3-month window during which you would be able to sign up to take your assessment. The leadership NPQs, same again with the November and the February cohorts for this year, September and February going into the future, but they're split across 4 learning blocks and they cover the course of 18 months. So they're a slightly longer commitment. You can see on that wheel on the right-hand side of the screen there as well, the sorts of learning experiences that each of the modules or each of those learning blocks will actually cover. So within each learning block, so that 3 times within that specialist, you'll have face-to-face workshops, you'll have online seminars, you'll have an opportunity to participate in coaching, there's some self-directed study, and we also build communities of practice as part of this. So that's opportunities to network with other participants, both within your local cohort and those that are studying the course more widely across the country. The summative assessment, this is the bit where, when I say it, a lot of people who've already done the traditional NPQ route kind of look a little bit disappointed that they're not doing these new NPQs, because it is vastly different. So no longer is there a requirement for you to write up your own case study. Instead, you have an 8-day window, and in that 8-day window, you are presented with some case study materials about a school. So that might be their budget, their development plan, their Ofsted report, some stakeholder engagement feedback. There might be examples of quality assurance practices that have taken place, some policies, some documentation. You'll then be given a series of questions and asked to respond to those questions in a maximum of 1,500 words. Those questions will be about, if this was your school, what would be your priorities and how would you implement any change that you were looking to bring about? So they're quite well structured questions, but it means that it's a much tighter assessment framework than it has been in the past, and also hopefully slightly less onerous in terms of the workload that it puts upon people. But you can see why we're saying that it would still be a good idea to run your own change management project in your school, because it gives you a lot more context to draw upon when you're writing your answers to those case study questions in the assessment. I'm just going to pause there and ask if there are any questions relating to what we've covered so far, either the courses themselves or the period of time that they run over. Nope. Oh, Toby.
I think Toby.
Hi.
Hi.
See me okay? Yeah, quick question. So you said about the summative assessments. Is that per block or is that for the whole thing?
No, that's for the whole thing.
Okay.
So there are formative assessment points throughout the qualification, but they're really self-reflection questions. So that's really getting to grips with how well you think you've digested the content of the course or been able to implement things as a result of being on the course. But that case study comes at the end of the entire course.
Okay. All right. Brilliant. Thank you.
Okay, in that case, let's move on and dive into the detail of some of these, and we'll start with the NPQ LT. So that's the leading teaching qualification. So this really is for those who have a remit that looks after leading teaching in a particular subject or a faculty or a key stage or a phase. They need to be responsible for the learning of other adults in their context. Doesn't have to be somebody who's working at the whole school level, though. This is really just those who are focusing in on one particular specialist subject area. It's about having direct impact on classroom practice, and it's about improving student outcomes through looking specifically at pedagogy and assessment. So those middle leaders will be able to drill down into how change is managed within their own particular context. So where you've got those 9 areas of study on the right-hand side, there will be the opportunity for those who are maths practitioners to learn about those 9 elements, but then also specialise down into, well, how does that work in maths? Or if you're an early years leader, how does that work in the early years setting? How does that work in psychology? How does that work in geography? And there'll be an opportunity to really specialise down into those, as I say, subject areas, key stages or phases when it's looking at looking at teacher development and leading teaching. The 9 areas of study are covered across those 3 modules of learning, and it will always start with looking at the curriculum and assessment elements, and then that area of professional development and the principles of implementation spans across the whole year. So you'll be looking at the key ingredients for making something work, and then how you implement that, and then how you sustain and manage a change into the long-term future. But this is really about those people who are specialist in their subject area and really want to get to grips with what it means to be an expert teacher or an expert leader within that setting. Okay, so that's the LT. The leading teacher development qualification is really for those who have responsibility for the CPD of others within their school. So this is where we were looking specifically at those that have been identified as the ECT leads or the ECT mentors within your school. It may be a qualification that is best suited to them, or anybody else that has responsibility for developing practice of experienced colleagues or those that are new to the profession and in an ITT setting. So again, this is about improving outcomes, and it's about how do you ensure that there is a consistency of language and practice across your school setting. It's really about how do you go about developing a curriculum for teacher development and teacher instruction, and how then do you check that the things that you have wanted to implement have been understood and are being implemented effectively. There's also an element of this course that looks at how you engage with external expertise. So it encourages participants to think beyond their own school about the other subject specialist groups or other areas of expertise that might be drawn upon to bring into your school to enrich your CPD offer. And it really is this one, the opportunity to see that golden thread right the way through from ITT through the ECT experience and then into leadership and managing others. It's really the standard for teacher professional development. Okay, Faye, if we can move on. And the last of the specialist qualifications is the leading behaviour and culture qualification. And this one really is all about implementing cultural change. So this is for those people who have a responsibility in the pastoral sector of your school, those that are looking at leading behaviour or student wellbeing or student culture. It gives you a really detailed understanding of regulation and policy. So these will be the people that need to really get to grips with what the SEND policy says, with how you implement, particularly around number 4 there, how you meet the needs of those with particularly complex behavioural issues. And it's really looking at the interventions that you might want to put in place, how you identify which interventions you might want to use, how you select the right ones, and then how you implement those in a way that is manageable and sustainable for all of the stakeholders, whilst looking at stakeholder engagement as a separate issue as well. With all of the specialist qualifications, and in fact with all of the NPQs, there is a body of research that sits underneath each of the qualifications that really is defined by the DFE and written in conjunction with the EEF. And that's what will form the basis of the research that is drawn upon as part of those qualifications. So if you go onto the LC website at the moment and you look at the programmes pages, you'll be able to see there's a link to the National Professional Qualification Frameworks. And within those frameworks, you can see the detail that sits underneath these areas of study. So each area of study is broken down into know that and know how to. So there are elements of what is it that you need to be able to be aware of in order to be effective in this particular specialism, and then what is it that you need to be able to do to bring about change within this particular specialism. And then each of those is supported by a body of research that's been approved by the DFE as well. So the other change that you'll find on this course is that the body of research that is referred to is all approved by the DFE. So nothing in the frameworks, nothing that isn't in the frameworks is allowed to sit in the curriculum for these courses. And that's already been published, so you'll already be able to engage with some of that and you'll be familiar with it. So there are elements of the EEF implementation guidance, their behaviour guidance, some of the latest information around setting of students and dealing with students with behavioural needs or SEND needs as well. And then if we move on and look at the leadership qualifications, as I said before, these are probably the area where there's been the least amount of change. And all 3 qualifications at this level study those 10 areas together. So the difference between the SL, the H and the EL is in the nuance of the level of responsibility. So for example, within the section where it's looking at working in partnership, with the SL, it might be about how you're working in partnership with those already within your organisation or those that are connected to your organisation, like feeder primary schools. With the H, it would be how you're working with your leaders to ensure that you are working in partnership with other organisations. And then at the EL level, that's expressed through how are you making sure that those partnerships exist across your trust or across your organisation and beyond your organisation. But there really is quite a tight thread that runs through the SL, the H and the EL. And although you're not repeating material, you're repeating looking at those same 10 areas in order to be able to really tighten up on what effective school leadership looks like. And I think that's probably as much as I need to say to cover off the qualifications. There is an additional element to the offer for those studying the NPQH this year, and this is open to those people who are in the first 2 years of headship. So you can have done the old style NPQH and still be in the first 2 years of headship, and you would be able to sign up to the additional support offer. Equally, if you are on an NPQH and you are then offered a placement as a head, you would be able to take up this additional support offer across your first 2 years. And it's really an opportunity to undertake those 4 key elements that you can see on the right hand side there. So you would have the opportunity to visit other schools, and then they would be supplemented with online discussion around the issues that you were looking at within that school setting. There will be training sessions specifically for those working at headship level based on a range of different topics, and they would again be facilitated either face-to-face or virtually, depending on how many people were interested in each of those talks. You would receive 2 free coaching sessions across that period of time as well, so 2 90-minute coaching sessions, and then access to a network of mentors as well. And it's really about how do you draw on those who are already experienced practitioners and put into play some of their wisdom in the way in which you're operating in your first 2 years of headship, so that it feels like a slightly less lonely journey than it can feel like if you're starting out and that support network is not there and not available for you. So I've realised I've said a lot of things in the space of quite a short amount of time. So I will pause and open that up to questions that anybody might have, either about the content or the course or the style of tuition, anything that you might want to ask about our NPQ offer. Stunned silence. I guess the important question is probably money, and where you sit on the money side of things. And I know that Faye's added a couple of slides because it's only in the last week or so that we've had confirmation that we've been allowed to share this information with you. So if there are a number of different routes into paying for the courses, if you have an applicant who feels that they would like to do so, they are able to self-fund, so they could pay for the qualification for themselves, although they would still need your permission to be on that qualification, so they'd still need the sign-off from their head teacher to say that it was an appropriate form of professional development for them. The second route would be for the school to fund the place, and then the third route is that some of the courses are scholarship eligible now. So the NPQ LTD, that leading teacher development, as you can see there, is fully funded if you have got responsibilities for, or you aspire to have responsibilities for, teacher development within your school setting and you work in a state funded school in England. The NPQH is fully funded if you are a head teacher or head of school in the first 2 years and you work in a state funded school in the UK. And then all of the NPQs are fully funded if you are in the 30th percentile for free school meals, not if you've got 30% free school meals in your school, but you have to be in the 30th percentile for free school meals nationally. At ELSI, we have a database that tells us whether you are in the 30th percentile or not, and we will be sharing that information with Faye so that she's able to let you know whether your spaces are scholarship funded or not.
Nicola, just to come in there, we've just sent 2 emails out today. So one's gone to everyone within our Teaching School Hub area and people that have expressed an interest in working with us. For everyone. The second one is specifically for those that appear on that list. So if you've got 2 emails, it very clearly says you are within the 30th percentile and therefore your courses will be fully funded. So they should be in your inbox or in the contact address that we've got for you. That's where they should be. You might just want to check your junk email because sometimes they get redirected to that. So if you haven't got them, then please do check the junk email and get in contact with me if you haven't got them, and I can resend them for you.
So in terms of the application route for getting onto one of the NPQs, the application rounds are now open. So you are able to go directly to the ELSI website and there is an apply now button, which you will be able to click onto. And the apply now button then registers your interest with us, and we then start that registration process. For all of the providers, so all 9 providers nationally, all participants who are wanting to take an NPQ will also have to register on the DFE portal. So there's a 2-phased approach to the application process. Part of it is registering on the DFE portal to say that you want to do one of the qualifications, that you know that how you're going to be funded for that qualification, and you know the provider that you're going to be working with. So it's important that the participants in your school know that they need to select ELSI or LLSE when they get through onto the DFE portal. That will also be the space where the DFE check their teacher registration, their teacher reference number. So when they go on to the DFE portal, they'll need to have their teacher reference number and their national insurance details to hand in order to be able to complete the DFE portal. They will also be directed to complete the ELSI application form, and that's when we collect more of the information about who they are, what type of school they're coming from. There's an opportunity for them to say why they're interested in that qualification, and it also takes us through the route for then the head teacher in your school giving sign off to their ability to undertake that qualification. And if you are not scholarship eligible, there obviously then is also a contracting phase with your head teacher to make sure that your head teacher is happy to pay for that qualification as well. So although it sounds like a rather convoluted process to get yourself actually onto one of the courses, I can assure you it's the same process that other providers are having to go through as well. So it's that kind of 3 phases, if you like. There's the apply now button on the LC website, which you would have to go to first. Then there's the DFE portal registration. The DFE sends us some of your information back to say that your teacher reference number has come through fine, and to clarify whether you're scholarship eligible or not. And then there's the LC application form that just gathers all of those details in order for us to be able to set you up on the learner platform and make sure that if you aren't funding that course through scholarship, that we know who to send the bill to, and that they're happy to pay the bill as well for that qualification. Okay, I think that's it from me, Faye.
Thank you, Nicola. Has anyone got any questions they want to ask immediately? Ian?
Just quickly, so just to confirm that the NPQ LT isn't funded, it's just the NPQ LTD.
Yeah, that's right. The LTD is the one that's scholarship funded for all. If you are in the 30th percentile for your free school meals, then all of the qualifications are scholarship eligible for you.
Okay, thank you.
Craig?
Hi. Is there a particular closing date for applications for the November series?
There isn't a closing date yet, and if you were to miss the deadline, if you like, then your application would be processed as part of the February cohort, and we'd let you know. So if we suddenly, let's say we only had 30 spaces available on the Thames Gateway leading behaviour and culture, when those 30 spaces were full up, we would then look to well, obviously come back to Faye and see if she could run another cohort, but if not, then push your application and let you know that you were going to be part of that February cohort.
Thank you.
Matt? Did you have a question?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I feel like I recall that I've applied for the NPQ SL via the LSE website, but where can I find the link for the DFE one?
We will be sending that to you as an email. So we've got you, if you've registered on the LC website already, then we will be sending you out an email that has all of the details that you need to complete your application. That's why that's that first phase. So we will send you the link to the DFE portal.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else with any questions? What I'll do is I'll send out the recording of this meeting so that you've got it. If you want to share it with colleagues, that's fine. And I will also share a copy of the PowerPoint so that you've got the information as well. And any questions, then please feel free to come to me by email at the Teaching School Hub, and I can obviously consult with Nicola and get back to you ASAP. Thank you very much for your time tonight. And thank you, Nicola, for coming and talking to us in more detail about the qualifications. It's really, really useful to know kind of what they are so that we can start pushing them to staff that we think will be interested and suitable. So thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your evening, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.